And this is a very simple idea, but as you'll see, its implications are incredible. So this is a little analogy or metaphor to introduce this idea. I want us to imagine what would happen if we were to put a fully conscious brain on a migratory stork. Now we pick storks because we've got to put a big brain on it so they might be able to carry it. They probably couldn't, but for the story we can imagine they can. I mean, they do winter in the swamps of South Africa, and they migrate unerringly around the coast of Africa up to the rooftops in Europe where they nest each spring. Now they don't understand where they should and shouldn't fly. They've learnt that through natural selection. In fact, these storks, there's two flight paths. One goes up the White Nile, one goes around the coast of Africa. Now, the way they learnt that perfect orientation to where to fly and where not to fly was through natural selection. Those storks that tried to fly across the Sahara died, whereas those storks that had a genetic makeup that inclined them to fly left, maybe they had shorter left wings or something and they couldn't be as strong, whatever it took, it would be a massive genetic adaptations. To the magnetic grid of the Earth, whatever, through natural selection, they've learned exactly where to fly and where not to fly. So they are perfectly orientated to where they should and shouldn't fly, right? But very importantly, they sure as hell don't understand where they should fly and why they should fly there. It's not an understanding-based orientation. So what would happen if we put a brain, a big conscious brain, massive association cortex like we've got, on the head of one of these storks, and we jump in an ultralight and we fly along because we call him Adam Stork, because you'll see this story relates to the story of Garden of Eden. So we jumped in an ultralight and we've got Adam Stork here following the flight path with all the other storks. And we want to actually see what is going to happen. So and he's flying along. Surely old Adam Stork is a thinking person now. He's a self-adjusting organism. He's fully conscious, able to understand cause and effect sufficiently to manage events to his own chosen end. So he can choose what he wants to do. He's, as it were, wrested management of his life from his instincts because he's sufficiently conscious being, able to understand cause and effect, sufficient to manage cause and effect, to manage events to his own desired end, but he doesn't know what those ends might be. So we're following Adam Stork along. Surely Adam Stork's going to start thinking for himself. He's going to start thinking, I'm feeling a bit tired, I might fly down to that island. There's an island out there. So he heads off to carry out his first grand experiment in self-adjustment. But what's going to happen, he's going to get halfway down, so we're going to see him deviate off course from the other storks, and he's going to think his instincts are going to start to, in effect, criticise him for flying off course. He's going to be in a dilemma. Either I obey my instincts or I don't. If I obey them, I'll feel good because my instincts won't criticise me anymore, and all the other storks who are following the flight path, they'll be all happy to see me back on course, and everyone will be happy except my brain, my conscious brain. But anyway, he doesn't want to get at odds with his instincts, so he flies back on course. So we've seen him divert, hesitate, fly around a bit of a loop, then fly back on course. So he's now flying back on course, and all the instincts are happy, and his other friends are happy, but he's not happy. His mind's still thinking and trying to work out. He's got no knowledge at this stage, no basis to decide what he should and shouldn't do. And he's only going to find out what are the right ideas and what are the wrong ideas by experimenting. It's called heuristic refinement. He's got to experiment in different ideas to find out what are the right ideas and what are the wrong ones. So he starts feeling a bit hungry, and he looks down and sees another island with some apple trees on it. And he thinks to carry out another grand experiment in self-management. Thinks, I'll fly down and have a feed of apples. Why not? No reason at this stage. He's got no knowledge. I'm only going to find out what's right and wrong by experimenting. So again, he carries out a grand experiment. Heads off down towards the island with the apple trees. And again, so we see him heading off again. And again, he hesitates because his instincts are trying to pull him back on course. And all the other storks are screaming out, hey Adam, you're off course, come back here. So his instinctive self and all of nature, the all innocent world, that's all associated with our original innocent, with his instinctive self, because he grew up with nature, with the sun, the rain, the sky, trees, other birds, clouds. They're all, in a sense, friends of that original instinctive state. And so by association, the whole world's on his back, criticising him for flying off course. But this time, he doesn't give in, because he works out, look, I have got to find knowledge. I've got to carry out these experiments. It's only by thinking and trying to work out what I should and shouldn't do, might work and what might not work, that I'm going to find out what does work and what doesn't. I have to experiment in self-adjustment to master this marvellous tool, this brain, which after all is nature's greatest invention, surely, the conscious thinking mind. And so this time we see him hesitate, but he perseveres, because he's worked out, I've got to do what I've got to do. And so he heads off towards the island. Now, the intensity of the criticism is going to magnify. It's going to get much louder. His conscience, this instinctive voice within him is going to be screaming at him, you're off course, Adam. Now, ideally, at that moment, day one of original sin, if you like, what should have happened, ideally, is Adam Stork should have sat down on a limb somewhere with his instinctive self and the other instinctively obedient storks and had a little talk to them. Said, just hold it, you fellas, and my conscience, stop criticising me. There's a reason why I'm needing to do this. I'm a conscious person. I'm using a different form of information processing to the genetic learning system. I'm using the nerve-based learning system, which can remember events. And on the basis of being able to remember past events, we can compare them with current events. We can find commonly occurring events. On the basis of what's commonly occurred in the past, we can start to make predictions about what's likely to occur in the future. We're an insightful learning system. And so you could say to the other, you're not. You're a gene-based learning system. You acquired your perfect orientation through natural selection, which is it's not an insightful form of learning. Those ideas that don't work, those storks that tried to fly across Sahara got frizzled and didn't make it, so their genetic makeup didn't stay. So that's how we acquired our perfect orientation. But that's not an insightful learning system. The gene-based learning system is not insightful. It's blind. The nerve-based learning system, based on memory, sufficiently developed as it's become in humans, can become conscious of the unsaid words, of how experiences are related, how information makes sense of experience, and on the basis of that start managing events to his own desired end. Rest or take management from the instincts and take over, become a self-managing, or what's called a self-adjusting system. So he could sit down on the limb and explain to the other storks and to his instinctive self that there's a good reason why he has to carry out these experiments, right? And what would happen, his instinctive self and the other storks and all of nature, who are all friends of the original instinctive state, would also, sorry for getting on your back and criticising you, we'll bear with you. We'll tell you when you're off course, but we won't criticise you. That would have been marvellous. But that's an impossibility. He's setting out to find knowledge. He doesn't even know about genes and nerves yet. He has no capacity to explain anything. That's what he's setting out to find. He's stuck in a conundrum. He can't. He hasn't got the understanding that he needs to defend himself. So he can't explain himself. It's a terrible, terrible situation. He's got to do what he's got to do. For all appearances, he appears bad, but he isn't bad. At any time, he can fly back on course and stop the criticism. Feel good. But he will not be contributing to the accumulation of knowledge by doing that. So he can't sit down and have a talk with his conscience, or with his instinctive self, or his soul, or the other birds that are still obedient to their instincts, or appease nature, the whole natural world, which is all associated with his original instinctive state. He's got no ability to explain himself. So what inevitably had to have happened? I suggest he only had three things he could do. And the 7 deadly sins of sloth, loveliness, whatever they all are. They all round up under these three things. He tried to block out the criticisms, and I don't want to listen to it. I'm not bad, but I can't explain to you why. One day I will be able. Until that day, I'm just going to not listen to you, because I can't do what I've got to do and cope with this unjust criticism. And I can't shut you up. I can't stop the criticism, because I haven't got the explanation. And I'm going to have to keep doing what I've got to do to get the explanation. The human condition is absolutely shot through with paradox. We're good when we appear to bad, we're bad when we should be good. It just gets so complicated. That's why that climbing rope analogy is so powerful, because it looked impenetrable. How can you make sense of that? How could we be good when we're bad? It looked impenetrable. That's why you need a very simple analogy like this to make sense of the impossible. Anyway, he blocks out the criticism because he can't defend himself against it. He becomes alienated. He lives in denial, which we'll come to later, which is Plato's cave, this famous analogy of living in a cave where we hide from the glaring light of the sun, which is the truth about ourselves which we can't face, which the fire in the mouth of the cave represents, that's blocking the exit. And all they can look is see shadows in the back of the cave. It's the most famous analogy in the whole of philosophy, as I'll explain later. Because we haven't been able to, there's so many truths, and we're going to hear a lot of them today, and they're going to become so nervous about some of these truths that you'll hear people squirming, because the whole door's going to be unlocked about what has been going on. But it's all going to be defended. So he blocks out, so alienation, denial, psychosis. Psych means soul, isis means healing. Psychiatry, they all mean related to healing. Why has it been killed off? Why does it have to be healed? Why did it get knocked out? Because we had to deny this criticising instinctive state. He gets angry towards the criticism. Hey, listen, mate, he said, get off my back. I'm not bad. I'm not bad. I never was. And one day you'll understand why. And until then, get out of my face. So when you see people waving their fist, that's the symbol, human's historic symbol of, mate, I can't explain it to you, but I'm not bad. I may be one upset human, but I am not bad. So he gets angry, and he determines to prove himself. He becomes egocentric. And if we look up ego in the dictionary, it says the conscious thinking subject or self, the conscious thinking self. So the ego is just another word for the consciousness, this large brain. He becomes egocentric, ego-centered. The ego, the conscious thinking self, becomes centered or focused on trying to prove that he's good and not bad. He becomes preoccupied trying to validate himself, looking for a win wherever, anything that will give him some sense of worth against this tirade of unjust criticism that he's having to live with. So he becomes massively egocentric, centered on trying to validate his conscious self. He becomes angry, egocentric, and alienated as the three only responses available to him to cope with the horror of his condition. Situation. And as I said, those three things, anger, egocentricity, basically, and alienation, will round up all the supposed sins of the human situation. Now, so it's a very paradoxical situation, the human condition. How could we be good when we appear to be bad? And there's a marvellous expression of that. Joe Daren's 1965 song, The Impossible Dream, from the play The Man of La Mancha. It has this incredible line in it. We had to march into hell for a heavenly cause. We had to fly off course in the pursuit of a heavenly cause, namely knowledge, and suffer massive self-corruption, anger, egocentricity, and alienation. And if you listen to the words of this, they're truly extraordinary. To dream the impossible dream, to fight the unbearable foe. So now we're going to dismantle all mythology, and I mean the whole damn lot, as you get to see this as this unravels. So we're just starting with some. So the human condition shot through with the paradox of the human situation. Dream the impossible dream. So no stork, fully conscious stork, is going to be able to relieve himself of his condition until he finds sufficient knowledge to be able to defend himself and explain himself. So he's going to have to invent science. He's going to have to sit down and start accumulating knowledge. So sufficient knowledge to one day be able to explain to him, learn about nerves, learn about genes, learn that there are different forms of information processing system, and realise that if those two learning systems exist in the one organism, they were going to end up in a clash. And only then could he sit down with his instinctive self or the natural world and make peace and reconcile, ameliorate his condition.